Welcome to Heartland Forward's impact event on the Community Growth Program and Toolkit, or as CGPT, as we've gotten used to calling it. For those I haven't had a chance to meet, my name is Ross Duvall, President and CEO of Heartland Forward, and thank you for joining us today. We have a great lineup of panelists that you're going to enjoy hearing from, including a former WNBA star. We launched Heartland Forward in October 2019. We are headquartered in Bentonville, Arkansas. Heartland Forward is an economic think and do tank that is focused on improving economic performance in the center of the country, 20 states, the third largest economy in the world. When we first started discussions around the idea of starting a think and do tank focused on the heartland, my response was we need to have a focus on improving entrepreneurial capacity and participation in the heartland. There are multiple causes for the subpar rate of job creation in the heartland, besides low engagement in entrepreneurial activities. However, no other single factor can claim a higher explanatory power. Our country was built on the American dream. Even today, 245 years later, the opportunity to achieve a better, richer, fuller life, regardless of social class or circumstance, still resonates. But the challenge of becoming an entrepreneur and living the American dream in the heartland is much more challenging than on the coast. That is why we are so excited to be partnering with Donna Harris at Builders and Backers and Accenture. The CGPT is our inaugural program at Heartland Forward. We have an exciting goal to directly mobilize, equip, and fund 1,000 Heartland builders by 2023. The CGPT has been designed to change the narrative about the heartland and spur economic growth with a shared investment by each community that seeks to lead and equip entrepreneurs, or as we like to call them, builders, who have a vision to address systemic change in and the needs of their heartland community. We'll dive into the background of how we came to see the need for this CGPT, as well as the broader context of economic development and entrepreneurship in the heartland. In our conversations with Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Economic Development, Alejandra Castillo, we'll hear a video message from Jimmy Etheridge, CEO for North America at Accenture, our other partner. You're going to hear from a few of our first builder cohorts from Tulsa and Oxford about their passion for finding solutions to community challenges. And finally, we'll walk you through how you and your community can get involved. Thank you for joining us.
There are so many great things going on in the Heartland today, and more people need to know about it. We have incredible entrepreneurs. We have incredible small businesses. We have people that really care about building their community. The mission of Heartland Forward really is all about how do we help change the narrative about the middle of the country and kickstart economic growth. We define the Heartland as 20 states, everything from North Dakota down to Texas, over to Alabama, up to Michigan, Ohio, and all the states in between.
We're trying to identify common issues like investing in human capital, supporting entrepreneurship, as well as health and well-being that will help the center of the country, the heartland, achieve stronger economic growth in the future.
We call Heartland Forward a think and do tank.
A think and do tank does not want to create research that sits on a shelf. We want it to be out there in the real world.
We're making sure that the research is driving the programs, and then the programs are driving research.
We have launched a very exciting program called the Community Growth Program and Toolkit.
We have partnered with Accenture, which is bringing their digital skills to the table to build out the toolkit. And Builders and Backers, which is a world-class organization led by Donna Harris.
A lot of people think about entrepreneurship as just start a business. It's a way to make money. But if you think about the power of entrepreneurial thinking and doing, it's really a way to solve problems. And that's really what we're trying to do with Builders and Backers.
They don't have to quit their job. They can go through our program and they can test their idea with the Pebble Grant funding. and then they can grow.
Heartland Forward chose Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Oxford, Mississippi for our inaugural program. What we saw was that our program can really help elevate what was already happening in these two communities.
What's really inspiring about these builders is their passion, their stories. They come from these communities, they care about them, they want to have an impact.
I believe that education is a right and that everybody should have access to one that is meaningful to them.
I believe in this community, and they are good people. And that's what I believe the difference is the heart and the people.
Well, thank you for coming out. It's good seeing you. I'm so proud. Everybody came together, and to me, that means the world.
With the success of what we've seen in Tulsa and Oxford, and with the great partnership of Builders and Backers and Accenture, we are making a commitment that we're going to add 1,000 new builders within 2 years.
When you look at Heartland entrepreneurs, when you look at the small businesses that make up the Heartland, that's really what drives the American economy.
Hello, I'm Angie Cooper, Chief Program Officer for Heartland Forward. I'm pleased to introduce Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Economic Development, Alejandra Castillo. Assistant Secretary, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Angie.
You have led many teams in instrumental roles, leadership positions under 3 presidential administrations, Presidents Biden, Obama, and Clinton. You were the executive director of the Hispanic National Bar Association and former chief executive officer of YWCA USA, and now the first woman of color to be appointed Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Economic Development. Your work has focused on creating equitable and inclusive opportunities for all Americans. But what I love most about your background is your story. Your first lessons about business came as a child. You rose at 4 a.m. to help your father run his bodega in the Bronx and refined your math skills by calculating sales tax for your mother. Your bio shared that you were a problem solver at a very young age. This leads us into what we at Heartland Forward are doing and your leadership at the Department of Commerce. Again, thank you for joining us. We're just going to jump right into the conversation, if that's okay with you.
Perfect.
Great. So regional collaboration is essential for economic recovery because regions are the centers of competition in the new global economy. And those that work together to leverage resources and use their strengths to overcome weaknesses will fare better than those that do not. EDA encourages its partners around the country to develop initiatives that advance new ideas and creative approaches to address rapidly evolving economic conditions. What can you tell us about how these two drivers of economic growth, innovation and regional collaboration, inform your vision and approach of local economic development at a national level?
So Angie, let me begin by first thanking Ross for those introductory words and you for that gracious introduction as well. But more importantly, I appreciate what Heartland Forward is doing, focusing on improving the economic performance of rural communities and community-based solutions that are advancing individual empowerment and what our country is built on. This is truly the American dream. The work that Heartland Forward is doing is exciting, it's innovative, it's energetic. And I'm looking forward to seeing how Community Growth Partners, the Community Growth Program and Toolkit works to spur entrepreneurial growth throughout the Heartland by increasing access to transformational capital and resources. So let me just take the question because it's a great question. You know, right now I have to underscore because these are live grants. I have to underscore the American Rescue Plan and the 6 different grants that are currently available. So if I may take a minute before I answer the question directly, you know, the American Rescue Plan,
but you'll just let me know, right?
Is actually putting a challenge out there. And the Build Back Better Challenge in particular is one that, again, October 19th is the deadline to apply for that. But it's the challenge to really look at how do we bring more people to the table to think about solutions that are community-led, that are bringing different stakeholders and actors into the design of regional economic development, focusing on a particular industry or sector. That application is $1 billion that we are going to really invest in anywhere between 20 to 30 applications, and looking at a much broader, innovative process of proposals. I also want to underscore the Good Jobs Challenge, which again is looking at how are we developing the workforce of the future, and underscoring one more time the value of partnership, the importance of partnership. We're also looking at indigenous communities. We're looking at coal communities. We're looking at the travel and tourism industry. So there's grants along that. And there, in summary, just visit our website and you're going to get all of that information. But let me go to the question that you asked, and forgive me for meandering a bit, but I think it's important to underscore this information. Innovation, looking at the fact that innovation just doesn't live in Silicon Valley alone. They've done a great job, but innovation lives in communities all across our country, whether it's innovation in agriculture, innovation in aerospace, innovation in advanced manufacturing. We need to make sure that we are inviting innovative processes, innovative tools, technology, also in the construction world, to make sure that we are preparing our communities, our businesses, and our workforce to those opportunities of the future. So from an EDA's perspective, not only are we looking at regional, which is the geographical component, but we're also looking at diversity and inclusion from various communities, whether it's communities of color, rural communities, coal communities. And I want to invite folks, if I may, to look at our EDA's new investment priorities. That is kind of the cliff notes of what we're looking for. Those 7 investment priorities are really going to inform how we're looking at these proposals. So a lot going on. Innovation is at the core. Regional economic development is at the core. And looking at the various partners that we are hoping to bring to the table, not just the public sector, the private sector, universities, community colleges, nonprofits, the philanthropic world. These are all incredible stakeholders that have a lot to say. And I'll end with this, those who are closest to the problem are also closest to the solution. And that's why we want to make sure that this is not a top-down, this is not government telling you how to do economic development. This is really an invitation for communities to tell us how they believe community development can actually thrive in their respective regions.
Really great comments and advice. And thank you for sharing a little bit more about the approach that you're taking. You share in the mission and vision that we do at Heartland Forward is, what is that modernized approach? And when we talk about innovation and entrepreneurship, the innovative approaches to solving problems are things that both the Heartland Forward and Builders and Backers team, we do spend a lot of time talking about. And as a buzzword, we use a lot. Innovation is often, to your point, associated with high tech startups in Silicon Valley. But we contend that some of the most impactful and interesting innovations come from other parts of the country. Being the heartland in our economies, entrepreneurial success stories can have outsized impact on the community around them. You shared a little bit about your views in EDA's role in supporting entrepreneurship, specifically across the country, because we believe also at Heartland Forward, the middle of the country needs the coast just as much as the coast needs the middle of the country.
Absolutely.
So share a little bit more. And then also, obviously with COVID-19, with the pandemic continuing to affect families, communities, and businesses across the country, I know that EDA has thought about and worked on ways to build and support resilient economies. Can you expand a little bit more on those things?
Sure. And I always like to tackle this question taking a step back, because EDA is part of the Department of Commerce. And at the Department of Commerce, we have 12 different and very important agencies NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, comes to mind. NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology. International Trade Administration, ITA. The Census Bureau, which is incredibly important to inform us not only about population growth, but also population movement. So I bring all these sister agencies to bear as a way to expand on this conversation of where does innovation and technology lives. And you hit the nail on the head. It doesn't live just on the coast. This is a symbiotic relationship, as you said. The heartland needs the coast just like the coast needs the heartland. So along that line, I will say that at EDA, we're looking at not just looking at spurring innovation and innovative ideas, but also creating that chain or that ecosystem, if you will, of entrepreneurs, of the workforce, looking at it from a much greater holistic viewpoint. Now, you spoke about COVID. Indeed, COVID unfortunately continues to challenge us in so many ways, not only on the health issue, but also looking at the health of our businesses. And every community has dealt with it in different ways. And what has really come to mind and something that drives us is, how are we building resiliency? Not just resiliency to COVID, which is critical and right in front of us, resiliency to climate change, resiliency to the global marketplace that's changing as we speak. So the concept of resiliency is multifold, very layered. And I will tell you once again, the American Rescue Plan was that investment, again, for EDA alone is $3 billion worth of grants. And the way we have designed it and structured it is not only to tackle what's in front of us, really impacting us today, but also having that the arc of the future. Where are we making critical investments that are going to, again, not only spur innovation, but also create the jobs and the businesses of the future as we contend with changing demographics, changes in our climate, changes in the business world, changes in the global marketplace. So all of this is undergirded by competitiveness in every way possible.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about too, as we were developing the Community Growth Program and Toolkit, and in discussions with our friends at Builders and Backers, we talk a lot about how networks unlock the talents and connections. You talked about bringing the right stakeholders to the table. I always say that's when the magic truly happens. When you bring the right stakeholders of the entire community, and those sometimes in a position of power. I know equity is a major focus in leadership of yours, and it's your number one investment priority. Can you share a little bit more about what you're doing in this space?
Sure. So equity defined in a much broader way. So equity as we look at changes in our demographics, but equity as it relates to rural communities, equity as it relates to those who have been mostly impacted by COVID-19, whether it's communities of color, women. So we're looking at equity in as many ways as possible to make sure that indeed it is a very inclusive economic development strategy. Our goal is to make sure that we're all moving forward together. The challenge that President Biden has put out to the country is, how are we going to build back better? So there's a lot to bring to the table. And you're right. When you bring a very broad group of people, that's where the magic really happens. That's where the creative ideas come into play. That's where we can not only do an asset mapping, but also create what are the future opportunities that can come to us. For us, again, rural communities play a very important part, and it's weaved throughout our investment strategy as well. So you're right, equity is among the 7, but we are also looking at rural communities writ large to bring them into the fold in a meaningful way. It's not to suggest that they weren't part before, but really looking deeper into how are we going to leverage all those resources that we have across the country in rural America.
And Assistant Secretary, I know when we started this conversation, we said it was going to go by way too fast. And unfortunately, we are at the close of this session. I want to thank you for your time, but if you could leave us with just a couple of closing thoughts and remarks. As a reminder, the people joining us today are policymakers across the country, specifically in the Heartland. There's some of those stakeholders that we've talked about that we want to bring to the table. So share with us what's next and what can we and Heartland communities do to support the work, as you mentioned, how do we build back better together?
So very quickly, what's in front of us? Please go to our website and look at all 6 of the different grants under the American Rescue Plan. I think that many communities could possibly qualify for all 6 of them. I very much stress we need those proposals that are bringing partnership to bear. So that's what's in front of us. What's next? We need to pay attention to what's happening in Washington, D.C. with regards to the reconciliation. There are some very important dollars that very much can change and transform our communities. For EDA alone, we're looking at tech hubs and We Compete. If that comes to fruition, I want to very much invite all of your audience to pay attention to that and to be part of this conversation. And then I want to leave you with another invitation, which is we're putting together a group of individuals to be part of our National Advisory Council on Innovation and Entrepreneurship. That application is out there. Apply, be part of this conversation, be part of the solution as you already are, but help us as our partners at EDA. So I want to leave you with that. And this is a moment of true transformational change. It's not linear. It has to be transformational, which means we're not going to do more of what we did in the past. We need to look at the future with an innovative approach of maybe doing many things differently, but more importantly, doing it together. So I want to leave you with that. And thank you, Angie, again, for being part of this conversation.
Thank you, Assistant Secretary. You left us with some really good thoughts. Thank you for your leadership and what you are doing for our country. Look forward to being in touch.
Excellent. Thanks.
And now I'm thrilled to introduce Heartland Forward's partner and senior fellow, Donna Harris. Donna Harris is a serial entrepreneur, venture capitalist, co-founder of 1776, former managing director of Startup America, founder of Builders and Backers, and an absolute expert at lifting up entrepreneurs and reimagining what is needed to test ideas, experiment, and problem solve for communities. Donna is so glad to be sharing this virtual stage with you today. We have some exciting things to share. So in the essence of time, let's jump right in.
Do it. Good to be here. Thanks, Angie.
Donna, when we first met, I was struck by your vision and new way of thinking about transforming our country's approach to entrepreneurship and problem solving for communities. As I began to learn more about this concept, Builders and Backers, I instantly, as you know, was excited to partner and to put your ideas into action in the Heartland. First and foremost, we know there are significant deficits in the Heartland related to human capital and innovation capacity. This poses a serious challenge to improving future prosperity, as we know, in the middle of the country. Over the past year, Heartland Forward has been working to stimulate entrepreneurial thinking and action across the Heartland. This is what led Heartland Forward to launch our Community Growth Program and Toolkit and our 2 partner communities, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Oxford, Mississippi. The Community Growth Program allows Heartland Forward to lead and equip Heartland communities with that transformative and modernized approach to problem solving with an entrepreneurial mindset. This creates value for communities and increases access to capital and resources. We're also working with Accenture to launch the toolkit piece of this. This is a highly interactive platform. I like to actually say the toolkit is the icing on the cake to keep people in the program and in our communities connected, along with allowing them to discover data, investigate ideas and experiments, and connect and collaborate. So by discovering data, builders and backers have access to data needed for their ideas, experiments, and communities. And what do I mean by investigate ideas and experiments? Well, the builders and backers gain inspiration and learn from other successful communities. And then lastly, through the toolkit, we connect and collaborate. We will allow builders and backers to connect to support growing experiments and ideas in their communities. Our goal through all of Heartland Forward's program work is to be a resource for communities, the resources for communities that are listening today and those communities that we will work with in the future. And as a Heartland region and a country, we know we must transform our thinking about what success looks like in the future. This defines Heartland Forward's mission as a think and do tank. And we have some really great partners to help us do this. But Donna, before I share all the exciting details, let me take a step back. Your story is truly amazing, and we are thrilled to be a partner in transforming what is going on in communities we support, builderships across the Heartland.
Thanks, Angie. Well, we're thrilled also to be partnering with you. I think maybe it'd be good to start with a bit of backstory. So for people who I have not had a chance to meet, I come at this work from a very unique place. I'm a 6-time entrepreneur, the founder of one of the largest networks of incubators in the US. I'm a venture capital investor who has a track record that puts me in the top echelon of female seed stage investors in the US and in the world. And in the wake of the Great Recession, I was also the managing director of the Startup America Partnership. And now through my role at Global Entrepreneurship Network and the board there, it's really been a decade for me leading entrepreneurial ecosystem development and strengthening supports for entrepreneurs around the world. And it's from that vantage point that I know and have seen the power of entrepreneurship to create jobs for communities, economies as an increasingly urgent imperative for solving problems and for creating things for this entirely new digital world that we find ourselves in. But it's also how I started to notice some serious disconnects. Communities have spent billions of dollars building entrepreneurial ecosystems and supports for startups, but the formation rate of new startups has barely budged, and the startup failure rate also hasn't really decreased. And outside of really a handful of powerhouse cities, the sort of entrepreneurship isn't delivering on the hope for jobs and economic thriving, especially across the Heartland. And even more troubling is only a tiny fraction of our population is actually engaging in it. And in about 2017, I decided to really dig in and tackle this and figure out why. And what I thought would be a very short project turned into 3 years of reading thousands of reports, conversations, interviews, small group discussions, and our own experiments across the country to field test concepts and ideas of possible solutions. And it's from that the problem and potentially an answer was clear. So one of the things that we found is that in our quest to jumpstart our community's entrepreneurial engines and create jobs, we're replicating what we'll call a troubling playbook. Entrepreneurship has really become synonymous with venture capital, and venture capital has become the foundation for much of our startup infrastructure. Now, let's be clear. I'm a venture capitalist, and venture capital is a very important resource, and we definitely need more of it, fueling high growth companies across the nation and especially in the Heartland. But it's also the single most expensive form of capital, and it's really only appropriate for a small sliver of the most scalable companies, less than 1%, in fact. So despite a decade of work, venture capital is still overwhelmingly not reaching Heartland communities. It's still skewing towards specific patterns and demographics, but it's infused how we talk about entrepreneurship. It's become the default pathway for how we take action on our ideas. It underpins much of our economic development work. It's what we teach in our incubators, what we teach in our accelerators, and our university programs. It's the primary and sometimes only means of funding entrepreneurial ventures in many communities. And it's what we laud as entrepreneurial success. And here's what happens with that. Ideas that aren't perceived as venture backable or highly scalable at first blush quickly get overlooked or sorted out. even though all the data shows that we actually aren't very good at predicting what ideas have the potential for scale. So we've unintentionally made the barriers to entry for entrepreneurship high. We're asking people to potentially quit their jobs, incorporate. We talk a lot about raising money, even relocating to another city temporarily or permanently to join an accelerator or to get access to this capital. We've put a lot of really high stakes decisions early in the entrepreneurship process. And for most people, that means the step between I have an idea and I'm taking action, it may as well be a mountain. And really only a tiny fraction of people begin that climb. So all of our good intentions and investments aren't having the effect we'd hope for. And as one community leader smartly put it to me, and I hope he's listening, we've spent millions putting in the plumbing of our startup infrastructure, but the water isn't flowing. So we know from this research and from our experimentation across the country and our deep work in our beta community of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and our pilot communities in the Heartland, we have a solution to this. We can get that water flowing. We know that there are ideas everywhere. Everyone we've spoken to has something they care about. There are problems everywhere crying out for solutions. The digital era is ripe with opportunities to build new things. All of those ideas matter, not just the ones that will become unicorns. They can be companies that create jobs, few jobs, 1,000 jobs, it all matters. They can become social ventures that solve problems. They can be local projects that bring a community together. And all of these ideas can contribute to what we call a flourishing flywheel in communities. We can accelerate growth and thriving. We can remove the decelerants that are preventing communities from thriving, and we can create positive economic opportunities and growth. So, our big takeaway is we don't actually know which ideas will work or scale until we put them into action. So we've created a new approach that communities can use that's modernized and more accessible, and we're doing that together with Heartland Forward through the Community Growth Program and Toolkit.
Donna, again, I love your approach. Let's talk about this modernization that we keep mentioning. Based on Heartland Forward research and success we have seen from communities doing it right, or what we say, a new way of thinking about economic development, we know there is a tremendous opportunity to mobilize citizens. We have seen great success to date in Oxford and Tulsa, with the 100% retention from builders and the majority of builders being women of people of color, specifically in Tulsa. So talk to us a bit more about why this is a modernized approach and why it's working.
So fundamentally, we do a few things differently. First, we call it buildership rather than entrepreneurship, and that helps us draw a wider array of participants and ideas. We get rid of the jargon and the complexity. We use super simple language and accessible and compelling examples that anyone can understand. We focus on people, the problems they care about, the ideas they have, rather than an entity they've decided to form. We emphasize taking action not by launching a company, but by running small, fast, inexpensive experiments. And we lower the risk for everyone by covering the costs of those experiments. So we're purposely postponing the high stakes decisions like quitting jobs and forming companies until participants have had a chance to give their ideas a go in a small way. And we do that really quickly through four things. So first is the Idea Accelerator. It's a rapid pace, 45-day educational program. Brings participants together for workshops and curriculum and content, and most importantly, office hours with builders and residents and master builders from around the country. And our participants learn how to put their ideas into a rapid experiment. And then at the end of 45 days, that's when we back them through the Pebble Fund. We cover up to $5,000 in experiment costs, and our team continues to work alongside the participants to help sort of walk through the experimentation process and evaluate what happened, what did we learn? And we do it all through a data-driven lens so that we can eliminate the perceptions and biases about which ideas we think will or won't scale, or who the sort of traditional definition of a founder might be. And then we tell their stories. So we put a human face on the idea of buildership by capturing video and photos and essays, which you'll see in a minute. And as people begin to see these stories, they see themselves in those stories and they think, I can also put my ideas into action. And then finally, through a train the trainer model, we equip communities to run buildership workshops, the sort of short, fun, and inspiring events that can be a small step for community members to explore what it means to be a builder and what it means to experiment. And so all of this really creates a virtuous cycle, because we ask participants also to give back to others that are going through this. And so our hope is that communities can become builder communities through this cycle.
Donna, those 4 pillars of the program and toolkit are so important. Let's talk about the virtuous and sustainable cycle. You talk about it as the flywheel for communities. As community leaders, we need to have a better understanding of what keeps that flywheel in motion. When builders understand a community's flywheel, their actions in keeping it turning has enormous ripple effects. When you create a buildership mindset, people start seeing themselves as builders and hopeful. They start taking action, they leave the program with very refined ideas and a clear plan of action. There's stories then, as you said, start to inspire others in the community to give their ideas a try, which then creates that economic success that we're all trying to achieve in the Heartland and invest in. We're going to hear from some of our builders in Tulsa and Oxford in a minute, and I can't wait to introduce some of them.
Yeah, that's right. I can't wait as well. Right. And so, this isn't just about jumpstarting thriving. It's also a smart investing strategy. We can think about, for the equivalent of a single venture capital investment, we can put thousands of ideas and experiments into motion. We can unearth ideas that work and use data to tell us which ones those are, so we can provide additional further funding. And we can fuel new startups, we can fuel new ventures, we can fuel community solutions, and we can create untold ripple effects across America. So we've enjoyed working with Heartland Forward, and we really look forward to working together to bring this approach and this program to communities all across the Heartland.
Well, Donna, you are a great partner. We also appreciate the partnership with Accenture. And this now leads us to what's next. We are making 2 very exciting announcements today. We are announcing, as you heard earlier in some of the comments, that we're announcing the highly interactive digital platform. It will go live January 2022. As I mentioned, it will allow users to discover data, investigate ideas and experiments, and connect and collaborate, all while providing a digital space for builders to connect. And after hearing from multiple communities through our engagement with Tulsa and Oxford, we are announcing today that we're making a commitment to expand Heartland Forward's Community Growth Program and Toolkit, growing the Idea Accelerator, equipping 1,000 builders across the Heartland with the goal to raise $4 million. So more to come on how your community can get involved, but we're excited about launching the toolkit and Donna continuing to work with you through the program and our efforts. We'll now hear a short message from our partner at Accenture, the CEO of North America.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Etheridge, North America's CEO of Accenture. I'm really excited to highlight our partnership with Heartland Forward. Now, there's so much potential in the Heartland. And as we know from the many parts of our business and the work that we do, technology has the power to unlock that potential. Accenture's purpose is to deliver on the promise of technology and human ingenuity. One of the ways that we live our purpose is by doing good, and that means supporting our people, our clients, and our communities. With this goal in mind, I want to share 3 ideas to think about as we're going to move forward together. First, talent lives everywhere. We know the Heartland is filled with an entrepreneurial spirit and creative approaches to problem solving. We've made a deep investment in this region of the country, and we understand its unique challenges and opportunities. Second, even the greatest talent requires opportunity, advocacy, and resources to grow and flourish. The Community Growth Program and Toolkit will scale this talent, creativity, and innovation across the Heartland. We look forward to continuing to work alongside Heartland Forward and builders and backers to expand the toolkit with a goal of adding 1,000 new builders in the next 2 years. And finally, this is an idea that our pandemic era has made so clear. We are stronger together. We're stronger when we innovate and invest for the benefit of all. And working together, we can help energize the heartland by empowering workers and entrepreneurs with the skills they need to build career paths, to spark economic growth, and to improve their communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Jimmy and the entire Accenture team for their partnership. I now want to welcome our distinguished panelists, Kathy Taylor, Elizabeth Frame Ellison, John Maynard, Robin Tannehill, and Ken Levitt. Thank you for joining us. Entrepreneurs are key drivers of vitality and opportunity in the communities where they live. The roles that entrepreneurs have played in supporting the economic success of major urban communities like Silicon Valley and the Bay Area, Boston, Seattle, Austin, and most recently Miami are highly visible. That said, in heartland communities, traditionally off the radar for venture capital firms and recent college grads, finding funding and talent can be challenges. However, entrepreneurs in small and mid-sized cities can have a proportionally larger impact on their communities. So to the panelists, what are the unique challenges and benefits of entrepreneurship in the communities you work in? Should we start to rethink how we define entrepreneurship? Is experimentation the new approach? Kathy, I'd like to start with you.
Oh, sorry, technical difficulties. I think experimentation and risk taking really is the new approach. I think that in many times, both when I served as Secretary of Commerce and Mayor, I saw communities wanting to tackle the 1,000 and 5,000 person jobs, whereas if they took additional risk, the talent really was within their community to build companies with strong roots and more diverse talent.
Thank you, John.
You talk about unique challenges and unique benefits. Oxford is a very small town. We've got a smaller pool of capital, a smaller pool of talent. We do, have those challenges like everybody else. Everybody else is looking for access to capital, access to talent. We also have some very unique benefits too. And one of these is that these entrepreneurs have much fewer degrees of separation from local resources. And a lot of these local resources have access to other broader resources. So they're able to go more directly to a single point of contact to be able to reach some of those resources. Another one is that as these companies grow, they become personal models for how entrepreneurs see others or how others see these entrepreneurs. In a small town, everybody knows everybody else. And when you've got a success story, when you've got someone who's built a company, they tend to grow to a point where they sell, but they're going to plow that new capital right back into the community where they already have a head start. And then to your question about rethinking entrepreneurship, we need to depart from the notion that entrepreneurship is Bill Gates tapping away on a primitive computer and working towards venture capital. I love what Donna Harris has built here with buildership, because buildership describes anyone working to solve a problem in a community and to create a self-sufficient life for themselves in the process, or they're willing to crash and burn to do it. But we have to get behind these creative people who are working to create positive change for themselves and the communities. If we can support and guide their experimentation for a new idea, then they have a better chance of making a difference. And it becomes a less expensive and abundantly clear failure when their program, their project is obviously not labeled for success.
Mayor Tannehill, I would love to hear your additional thoughts to what John has been talking about Oxford.
Right. Well, thank you very much for inviting us to be a part of this exciting conversation today. You know, experimentation and risk taking, as Kathy just said, you know, is really the new approach. And I believe that economic development and entrepreneurship often today is more of removing barriers, of forming partnerships, of bringing people together. And that, you know, the past 2 years have certainly made us rethink about everything, but certainly it has made us dig deep and think about what makes us successful. And, you know, I hear people so often say, oh, I just can't wait for us to get back to normal. And I think, no, we don't want to get back to normal. We want to be more equitable and sustainable and resilient than we've ever been before. And, you know, that's going to look different than it did in years past. And we are lucky to have an economic development director, John Maynard, that you just heard from, who has embraced a new approach and has determined what works to encourage entrepreneurship in our community.
Great. Well, Tulsa, we're not going to leave you out. Ken, would love to hear your unique perspective on Tulsa, Oklahoma, and what's happening there in the success and challenges.
Thank you, Katie, and thanks to Heartland Forward for this great meeting and all the amazing work that you're doing. I do think we are entering golden age. Sounds too senior maybe, but like a comet of interest and growth in this idea of these heartland communities. I think we've learned that our country isn't strong if just the coasts are thriving, and we've got areas in the heartland that are struggling. I think that the pandemic has actually created some incredibly interesting technological advances that are making it much easier for people to come to communities and work around the world and not feel that they have to be in any particular place. And, you know, learning about Oxford and being able to go to Bentonville and living here in Tulsa, I mean, we know that there's a magic to these towns. They're beautiful, they're dynamic, they're interesting. And most of all, what I would maybe highlight and what we've experienced with this kind of crazy experiment we've had with Tulsa Remote, and we get these tens of thousands of applicants who are interested in moving here. People want to be part of a community. They want to be builders. It's what gives them nourishment in their life. It might be they want to live in a place where they can help start a nonprofit, or maybe they want to run for school board, or maybe they want to write a play and produce it in the community park. And these towns, these communities, I mean, we thrive on that. And I think it's tapping into something big in America. And so we're experiencing that. I see it with my colleagues from these other communities. And so I think we're all poised for some very exciting things in this next decade.
Thank you, Ken. And Elizabeth, I'd love to hear, you guys at Lobeck Taylor do a lot of experimentation, especially with Mother Road Market. So would love to hear your thoughts on the experimentation that's happening in the Tulsa area.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Katie. And so excited about the Heartland Forward announcement that you're expanding. It's great news. And I know you'll make so much more impact than you've already made. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with what Donna was saying when she was speaking. We really think experimentation is the new approach to entrepreneurship. We teach our launch program members in our kitchen incubator the lean startup methodology. We encourage them to fail quickly and pivot and use pop-up spaces in our food hall, Mother Road Market, to experiment before they take the big risk of investing serious capital, quitting their jobs, doing things like that, to really validate their concept and their market. In terms of the other question you asked, I think one of the larger challenges we see in the community is really breaking out of the good old boys club that seems to exist in the heartland, and recognizing that though talent is ubiquitous, access to opportunity and capital is not. And I think the benefit that Tulsa has as America's most generous city is much what I heard from Mayor Tannehill and from John, that, we really want people to succeed. We really want our culture to grow. And so we find that entrepreneurs are really willing to support and encourage each other and lift one another up.
That's great. And I'd like to stay with you for just a second. As a leader of a philanthropic organization, what needs do you see that philanthropic organizations are uniquely positioned to solve? And would you like to share any success stories about your community development efforts?
Always. So I think in particular, philanthropy is well suited to solve a couple different things. But, I think we can be the testing capital for pilot programs that really can provide a proof of concept. At the Lobeck Taylor Family Foundation, our mission is to decrease barriers for Tulsans with big ideas. And really what that looks like to us is focusing on building an inclusive destination district along Route 66 in Tulsa. We want to prioritize equity and pride of place and economic activity and physical infrastructure. And we believe that prioritizing those things will create an inclusive space that will really encourage and grow entrepreneurs. We also think it's really important to focus on small businesses and retail and service sector entrepreneurs, because those industries in particular are education agnostic and more accessible to a lot of our community who has been consistently denied opportunity because of the unequal treatment and unequal funding of women and people of color. I'm happy to share some success stories. And actually one of our team members, Shakori Fletcher, is a builder through the Builders and Backer program. And she put on 2 pop-up events in our retail space, the Shops at Motherhood Market this year. One that was in particular focused on Black-owned businesses, and we got a collection of Black-owned business entrepreneurs, put their products in our pop-up spaces, and it was our highest sales month we had in the entire 2020. So that was in the middle of the pandemic. And then building on that success, we created a pop-up for women-owned business. It was equally successful, and not only successful in terms of revenue, but successful in terms of access for our entrepreneurs to a new customer base, and then validation and data that they could collect on what type of customer enjoyed their products, how they could find other distribution, and they could take that data to other retail centers like Nordstrom's or bigger department stores and use that data to try to convince buyers to sell their products. So that was one of the great things. Now, we've had some challenges along the way. Obviously, working in the food and retail sector in 2020 has been a lot of sleepless nights. But I think digital marketing and access to digital sales is something that we see great growth opportunity in, and we have had trouble trying to figure out how to unlock that opportunity for e-commerce. So we're still working on that.
Great. Well, Ken, you had mentioned the Tulsa Remote program, and I know the George Kaiser Family Foundation is really focused on workforce development and retaining talent in Tulsa. Would love to hear just a little bit about some of the successes that you guys have seen in those efforts.
Well, we've been really inspired by talent attraction strategies from our inception, starting with Teach for America, and some of our greatest change makers and builders in Tulsa came from Teach for America, or City Year, or our Artist Fellowship program. But we did have a kind of a aha moment, actually about the year before the pandemic, or a few months before the pandemic, to say, there are a lot of folks who have jobs who would love to be here, and they may have an Oklahoma connection, et cetera. Maybe we could induce them with a little bit of an incentive. And we were stunned that this $10,000 offer just generated this massive interest. And then obviously when the pandemic hit, it's like it became like a phenom. Bentonville, they matched us with $10,000, and then they threw in a mountain bike, which I was really frustrating. But it is stunning. Again, we've had about 50,000 applicants in the last 12 months, and we will have moved about 1,200 people to Tulsa. And I mean, what's so cool so far is people are they want to be part of the community. So, and they're hiring people in the community, and the community's embracing them. I'm sure there are, there are natural, questions that arise about, bringing people in, but we're also obviously investing in place. So it works well. And last but not least, I'm very energized by our state of Oklahoma has kind of bought into the program, because this generates so much tax revenue, and they're co-investing with us. We're taking the risk, kind of as Mayor Taylor talked about. We'll take the risk if somebody leaves, that's on our dime. But if somebody stays and pays enough state income tax, then the state is nourishing this program. So it's a fun one, and other places are jumping on. We copied from Vermont, and other people are copying from us. So that's cool.
Great. Well, thank you. So shifting gears a little bit. So to Mayor Tannehill and former Mayor Taylor, as current and former mayors, what do you think can be done about modernizing our approach to economic development and experimenting and building entrepreneurs in the heartland? So former Mayor Taylor, I'd like to start with you, please.
Well, I think that we need to meet people where they are. I think Donna talked about equity in building, and that means access, as our friends at Accenture said, of opportunity, of advocacy, and resources. And that's how. So I think cities are, as John said, the closest to the people to provide that access. But we need to rethink the way we think about building jobs and building economic development, and be more intentional about partnerships with the resources that communities have, like their higher education, their technical colleges, and even their K through 12 environments. Really meeting people where they are and leveraging all the resources on the ground closest to the people is how we will create and I think change the culture of a building community.
Great. Mayor Tannehill?
Well, Oxford, Mississippi is a really special place. You know, we're a college town with a thriving downtown business district with tree-lined streets and beautiful architecture and the best public school district in the state and a wonderful quality of life. But when we start to look at what really sets us apart, it's not those things, it's our people. And we realized years ago that the traditional methods of economic development weren't what was going to propel us forward. And so we had to refocus and start to grow from the inside out, as Kathy was saying, focusing on the people. And, you know, we had to prioritize that, you know, we're going to be proactive in our planning. And so we've developed a 20-year plan that encourages growth while protecting the parts of our community that we treasure. And we're determined to grow without losing our cultural identity. You know, we can only be successful if we have buy-in from our community. And so we are more focused on people than on places. And we have really focused our economic development strategies on the people of our community and on creating opportunities, not just jobs. And we understand that economic development strategies are certainly not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. And so we're striving to build entrepreneurship in our community by empowering the people.
Wonderful. Well, John, we're almost at the top of time, so we're going to let you have the last word. And as we've been talking about, businesses don't emerge in a vacuum. They're an integral part of the community, and you work very closely with local businesses. So tell us a little bit about the role that a local business community can play in supporting the growth of new businesses.
You know, it's interesting. Entrepreneurs are the most self-reliant group of individuals I've ever encountered. Their daily life is completely focused on survival and solving problems on their own. So much so that many of them don't look up from the current issue at hand to seek advice or resources from others. The role of a diverse community is to understand what entrepreneurs actually need and want, and be ready to provide those resources when the entrepreneur or the builder needs them. You know, every community does have diverse resources. They may not know where they are, who they are. They don't have a ringleader to help pull those things together. But the trick is to let the entrepreneurs know that they actually have a place to go, and they have the resources that they're going to need when they need it. So the idea of this new version of economic development is that we really need to make sure that the community is in tune with what entrepreneurship actually is, or I like the new word buildership. So many communities don't quite understand it. I go back to that example I made earlier. They think of entrepreneurship as, you know, a guy like Bill Gates typing away and hoping for some venture capital somewhere. But they don't really understand that, you know, every small business is an entrepreneurial builder type of project. Every nonprofit out there has its own buildership involved. These are things that a community has to embrace and must make a high priority to be able to make it work. The sad thing is I see so many communities, they bend over backwards to give money and offer free land and buildings to these large companies that come in. And these are often large companies that don't need that. They're just working on their better bottom line to put you in competition with somebody in another state. But we also see those same communities that are saying, oh, well, I don't know who that guy is. He's a creative guy. He's not doing what we consider the high priority things. So we're just going to kind of ignore him. But as you pointed out earlier, the higher impact that you get and the lower cost of what it takes to get there through this buildership is so much more significant to a community. And then when these guys grow up, they stay where they grew up. A lot of these guys, they feed the ecosystem directly. And then these other small guys, they inspire entrepreneurial thought, and they definitely offer much more impact than they receive. So in short, a community really needs to understand who the entrepreneurs are, what the entrepreneurs are doing, and to be ready to offer whatever resources they need whenever they're ready for them.
Wonderful. Well, panelists, thank you all for joining us. We really could not run the Community Growth Program and Toolkit without your support. And now we would like for you all to meet our builders.
A builder is someone who has an idea to address an issue principally in their community.
All of us have ideas. All of us have problems we care about. Most of us don't know that there are simple ways to take action.
My project is called Regenerate, Reimagine.
My experiment is called Equitable Entrepreneurship.
Our QR codes will be in some stores around town.
I know I wanted to do some kind of podcast.
I thought, wouldn't it be great if we could have like a trade school for sewing?
I was really interested in making a bigger impact in the food industry and food systems.
I always knew I wanted to be a scientist and an astronomer. I didn't see anybody that looked like me doing it. I am a builder.
I am a builder.
I'm a builder.
When we talk about sort of a new way of thinking around economic development, entrepreneurship is top of the list.
For entrepreneurs, experimentation is really critical. Go put it into action and see what happens.
This place right here is the real deal.
This foundation has allowed me to come up with a new crazy idea, give it a try, give it a test, and see where it goes.
Having the opportunity to test this experiment has been incredible, and I'm really grateful to builders and backers for that.
The experiment is working, and I feel like it is what is needed in our community.
What I've learned from builders and backers is that it's okay to start over. It's okay to make mistakes.
I understood that I only knew so much. I had to be vulnerable and open to change.
Failure is something you shouldn't be afraid of, especially as an entrepreneur.
Builders and backers were very willing to challenge us, and I think it ultimately made the experiment a lot stronger for us.
We often think that entrepreneurs need capital, but really what they need most is connections. They need people who can help them. It's this community of connections that really matter the most.
Originally, I applied because the funding, I was like, oh, funding, yeah. But it's actually been the connections, the meetups, the mentorship.
One of the things that we're hoping is when you're coming to Tulsa, you don't have to look for community. It's already built for you.
I grew up here in Oxford, have a business here, raising a family here. With Heartland Forward, I feel like we put the booster cables to this thing and kicked the battery off.
I think I feel like I am kind of really more of a business person now.
I'm a little emotional thinking about how this program has really been a really wonderful opportunity for me. Everyone has an idea. It's about helping people bring those ideas to life.
And we're back. So it always inspires me to hear directly from the builders. Right? We all have ideas, we're putting them into action. And that's also the story of the next guest I'd like to welcome, Elena Beard. Welcome, and I'm glad you're able to join me. You are a obviously a successful WNBA player, but you're also a philanthropist and a rising investor in the venture capital space, and also a builder in your own right. Having won championship at every level from high school to the WNBA, and then transitioning to learning about the venture capital investing space, and now what you're doing in some exciting new ventures that you're working on as a builder. You've had such a great journey, but more importantly for today's conversation, you're from the Heartland, you're from Shreveport. And so thanks for joining us today.
No, thanks for having me.
I'd love to jump in because one of the thing that I have actually been the most excited about and impressed about in getting to know you is the vision you have for the work and how much it's rooted in sort of the sense of responsibility and the ethos of paying it forward, right? That you are building at the same time you are backing others through this lens. I'd love to have you share a little bit more about what that means to you.
No, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here to sort of learn more about Builders and Backers and Heartland Forward and the initiatives you guys have put into place. Just to back up a little bit, I'm from Shreveport, Louisiana. You mentioned the Heartland, but it is Shreveport, Louisiana, right? I was born and raised there. I had the opportunity because of the game of basketball to sort of, attend Duke University, which is by far one of the best decisions that I could have made sort of in my young age. But I also had the opportunity to travel all over the world because of the game of basketball, explore 27 different countries because of that opportunity. And so as I sort of left Shreveport, I've always kept it in my heart and close to me that I wanted to sort of build a sustainable model for Shreveport, Louisiana, whether there was a foundation, whether there was a business or what have you, knowing that I had the responsibility as someone who was raised by the city of Shreveport to bring it back. One of the things that I made sure not to do or become is one of those individuals that sort of leave their city, go and acquire all of these tools and skills that sort of is necessary to sort of build out and sustain an economy and not return and come back. And so that's something, and you ask about like paying it forward and what that means. It's a responsibility to acquire the information and then return and then pour into the next generation of leaders.
I love that. I mentioned earlier, you're a builder and you're a backer. And there's a reason our name includes both of those things, right? We all can be builders, and it turns out we all can be backers in our own universe. And so you're aligning the work that you're doing now, not just about your ideas and the things you want to execute on, but all of them are really aligning around the ability to see the potential in others and letting others bring their own ideas out into the world and to see a pathway to whether it's for a career or in the world of entrepreneurship. And you've had many, many different hats in your journey. I'd love for you to share, some of what you've learned along the way, insights in sort of these two different builder and backer hats and the different roles that you've played in your career.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, obviously basketball, has equipped me with an insane amount of like skill and ability. But, after sort of retiring from the WNBA after a 15-year career, a month later, I chose to pursue sort of an opportunity in the venture capital space. And that came about because I was always adamant about preparing for life after the game. And to say that I was in over my head would probably be an understatement, but that also leads me to sort of just detailing sort of the things that I believe are important when you are supporting those individuals who are, builders and backers, or as, someone like myself who's sort of exploring it as well, is that just always staying sort of authentic to who you are as an individual and owning it. One thing I had to realize as I sort of transitioned from sort of the WNBA to sort of venture capital space with limited knowledge, other than sort of what I've, had self-educated myself on, is just owning sort of who you are, because you're there for a reason. You bring a diverse perspective to the table and people want to hear from you. And so that's one thing that I had to sort of, adjust to and become comfortable with. Another thing I would say is just having and developing the saying yes mindset, right? I think a lot of times we're so afraid to say yes to the unfamiliar. And when you develop that mindset, you have the opportunity to sort of coach on sort of an insane amount of opportunities that you would have never imagined. And so that's kind of how I obviously arrived at the venture capital space. And I think a third thing would be just leaving your ego at the door and understanding that when you are exploring new opportunities, you're a rookie, just to use a sports analogy, you're a rookie all over again. And you have to be comfortable with sort of tapping into sort of the veterans and the veterans in the space and into their experience and sort of adding to your toolkit. And then the fourth part, and it goes along with sort of leaving your ego at the door, but also being okay with asking for help. And I can only speak from my own experiences, but as an athlete, it's hard, right? Because you've been sort of groomed to just sort of get through things, right? Anything that comes your way, you knock it down, you walk through that wall without any hesitation. And so just asking for help and knowing how to ask for help and when to ask for help was probably one of the biggest things that I've come to sort of learn throughout my short journey of being a builder and a backer.
I love that. So much of that's embedded in our program, right? We're all rookies. Even though we all have ideas, we're all rookies, but we somehow think other people are smarter than us. Other people know how to do this. I must be the only one who doesn't know how to do this. And we just need everybody to go, you know what, we're all rookies. Let's give it a go. Experimentation, we can go do this. And we're doing it together. We're doing it in community, and we're doing it in physical places like Tulsa and Oxford, and hopefully soon your hometown too. And this is how we're going to bring the change that we want to see in the country. So I wish we had way more time, because I've had the privilege of hearing some of what you are thinking about for the future. And I'm very excited for you and looking forward to having you continue to be part of what we're doing at Builders and Backers and what we're doing together with Heartland Forward.
No, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Donna.
Thank you. So we saw from the video, which I love, the builders that we're working with in our current cohort. And now we're going to get a brief opportunity to meet 3 of them, and they're going to join us for a short conversation. So you'll recognize first Andy Bedsworth from Oxford. She is affectionately known in our cohort as the Sewing Ninja. And then we're joined by Luca Matinda and Shakori Fletcher, who have a unique spin on a community-wide loyalty program that is currently rolling out in Tulsa and hopefully soon other places as well. So let's start, Andy, with you. I think your experience is such a great microcosm of the challenges communities face in getting more people to take action on their ideas, and why this concept of low fidelity experiments are so critical. Can you talk for a minute about the idea that you came in with, and then how through your experiment and looking at the results and the data, you saw an opportunity to pivot?
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. This whole program has been sort of game changing for me. I really wanted, as an artist and as a seamstress and working in the costume industry for many years, I wanted to bring the sewing trade. I wanted to teach people the sewing trade, to give them some sort of income. I thought it'd be cool to have another way besides just college, maybe some sort of trade school idea, to give people a skill that they could then use to earn income. And I wasn't quite sure how that idea was going to work. I just thought, I'll throw the idea out there. And then, being part of the Builders and Backers was really great, because you guys gave us a lot of parameters to work in and really helped us in how to kind of experiment and kind of how we were going to do that. So that was really great. I kind of came up with this idea of maybe having partnerships with factories, and maybe students would learn from me and then go to a factory and do internships, and maybe then even be employable by those factories. But as we started doing the research, we were really having a hard time getting into factories, honestly. And as I started thinking about that, instead of thinking, well, I got to figure out how to get into the factories, got to keep on trying, or this is a no-go, this means my experiment is a failure, I started thinking, is that really what I want to do? Do I really want to train people just to do piecework, just to sew at a machine all day and do piecework for factories? Is that really what I want to do? And it's not really exactly what I want to do. And I don't know that it's really what people want to learn how to do. And I thought, what if, as I was brainstorming with other builders, what if we created some sort of program that was more entrepreneurial, kind of like what I do, and what if people not only learn the trade of sewing, but then learn business skills to use to create their own sort of business, and that could be alterations, it could be an Etsy shop, it could be, a home decor sewing business, it could be whatever they wanted it to be. And that's when I kind of realized, oh, this could be more than just training people to work at a machine all day. It could be to empower them to have their own sewing-based business, which would be really interesting. I didn't, before this, for many years, I didn't even think of myself as an artist. I thought of myself as a seamstress. And then, 10 years into having my own business, I didn't really think of myself as a business person until really doing this builders and backers thing. And now I'm like, I'm an entrepreneur. Look at me. I'm a business person, and it's going through all this experiment. Y'all just broke it down really easy. And so I'm really excited to see where it's all going to end up being.
I love that. I mean, so many people I talk to across the country say the same things. I don't see myself as an entrepreneur, yet they're sitting on fantastic ideas, right? How do we get those ideas just moving? And it's such an important lesson for everybody. And your point about, failure isn't failure. It's just a data point. You learned something from that experience. So Corey, I'd love to turn with you. Similarly, like you came into the program with one idea, and you both changed your thinking and you found a partner to collaborate with. Tell us a little bit more.
Absolutely. Well, first, thank you so much for having me. So excited to be a part of this conversation. And yes, so coming into this program, I think one of the biggest takeaways for me has been, how do you approach having an idea? I think probably coming in, I would have been more so thinking idea outcome versus the model of buildership, really having you to think or frame more around problem solution and using experimentation to really kind of delve into which aspect of the problem are you maybe is a blind spot, or what aspects of the problems can you continue to broaden your horizons on, to see differently, to spin around, to look under, and be able to really refine how to best approach the solutions. And so having that type of approach then allowed me to realize how important it is to not hold too tightly to an idea. When I came into the program, I was really looking at building a discovery tool to really create the understanding and kind of curate the ability for those within a community to really have deeper engagement and understanding of, the intersections that really allow communities to thrive. There's nonprofit organizations, there's businesses, there's so many stories, and to be able to curate those stories as a discovery tool is what I was really looking at, to be able to increase exchange of ideas and really have this additive aspect of, when someone wants to engage with the community, do they know where to find the people and places that allows them to have that further engagement? So that was kind of the initial idea. But then being within Builders and Backers, we were really challenged to look at the synergies that existed between experiments. And that's when Luca and I started conversations and being able to tap into the mindset of, okay, take a step back from where you started and really spin it around, see what other aspects are potential. And that's where Luca, as an incentivization tool, kind of building out a loyalty program around businesses, that's where that synergy was found between our experiments, where we were then able to say, okay, I wanted to build a discovery tool that allows there to be that deeper engagement. Luca has this amazing concept for a business or community-wide loyalty program based around businesses, of minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, and being able to really highlight a loyalty program that allows there to be rewards across franchises outside of what we're typically used to seeing. So being able to combine those two ideas allowed us to really find the sweet spot of what we were both missing. And, a discovery tool that is incentivized and giving community members a reason to engage and a reason to be excited to learn more through storytelling and using the power of narrative audio stories to be able, and photography and content to really tell the story and mark the value that exists within communities that can often go overlooked and unnoticed. And being able to tie that to incentivization and rewards allows there to be a greater feedback loop. And we're really excited because we see the ability to not only in Tulsa community, what we've been able to create, we see that there's so many stories, so many businesses and organizations, because that was also another part of our combining experiments, not just looking at businesses, but how do you integrate rewards from nonprofit organizations, from cultural institutions like museums and a lot of those pillars of the community. So being able to take a step back from the idea I came into the program with and being able to collaborate and think as a builder, think in an experimentation model, allowed there to be an even greater product and outcome that I'm really grateful for this program allowing that to really spark the thinking.
Oh, that's amazing. You used the phrase when we were talking earlier this week of doing it together versus winning alone and losing alone, which I think is such a great summary of this. Like, we don't tend to think of this as a community activity, but it actually can and should be. And let's bring Luca into the discussion, right? You also came into the program with one idea, and that kind of evolved through the work that you did into Tulsa community. Can you talk a little bit about that evolution from your perspective?
Most definitely. And thank you, Donna, for having us here. It's such a pleasure. Yes, I came into it with this big idea and really kind of approaching it from more or less like how to get this product built and go into market. So it was a very different approach, the builder's approach, as far as the initial approach that I came with. But looking back some months later, it's such an eye-opener in how it was able to kind of shape our experiment. Because again, going from big idea to running a product to experimenting, that really forced me to like slow things down and really look at these things with a much different lens. And a part of the experiment, which I really loved, is we were working off this builder's loop. And if you can sort of like envision a circle, there's this sense of a portion of that circle, let's say a third of that wheel, is really digging into the problem. Another part of that wheel is trying to sort of like find ideas and things that would sort of apply to that problem as far as a solution. And then another part of it is experiment. And as a circle, it just loops around. So there's not really this finish line. There's not this is the goal we're running to. It's really more, how can we keep fleshing and making this idea even better? So I really, really love that approach, because a lot of that approach leaning more into the idea and the problem really forced me to really look at this very different, especially on a very contextual lens. And it also allowed me and Shakori to really link up, because we kind of realized early on that, hey, we're addressing very similar issues and we're working in a very similar space. And why, what better approach than not to like try to combine these and try to get even a better solution. So it really allowed us to really carve that space versus running into it. And then one thing that even resonates with me too is that even dealing with our partners, a lot of them are sort of in this same experimental mode. I think something that I've noticed being in Tulsa, and for folks who live in Tulsa that are in this call or folks who visited here, Tulsa, specifically Greenwood, has this, historical legacy of having a circular economy. And it's something that we see it today. I mean, even one of our partners, Greenwood Gallery, I walked to her gallery and, she was selling coffee and tea from the next lounge next to them. And it's not necessarily this whole, oh, we're doing this, but it's just more or less, I have a gallery, I don't serve food, my friend / neighbor next to me sells tea and coffee. Why not have them sell stuff here so we can have our customers have these same services? So that sense of collaboration has always existed in Greenwood. And what I really liked is that beyond just giving us better solutions or better angles to these issues that we're looking at, it also really helped us work with our partners in a much more intentional way. So, as opposed to coming into it with, here's a product and here's this big solution that we've worked on, underground for X amount of months and you should use it because it works. That approach is totally different than, hey, we're trying to tackle this problem. Can you help us experiment around it? And we found that to be really helpful because it's really engaged our partners in a much more deliberate way. And it's been something that we've done through the process. It's not just this last minute sort of final, oh, by the way, here's a product or a service. It's really how can we build this together for something that can really benefit all of us. So that's been probably the most biggest eye opener, really having a shift in how I was looking at entrepreneurship or product or just solutions in general, to looking at it from more of an experimental lens.
No, that's great. Well, all of the stories from our three speakers today and the other participants in the cohort are available on the website, buildersandbackers.com. If you just follow on the builders link, you can actually, each of them have their own landing page. You can see their videos, learn more about their experiment. You can follow along on social media. And by the way, be a backer, support them through opening doors, making connections and whatnot. So you'll be able to hear more from these three speakers as well as the rest of our builders if you join us next week on October 6th, 11:30 to 1 Eastern time. We're going to hear from all of our builders and they're going to share more about their journey, and we'll see some of their videos and highlights as well. So let me now turn things back over to Angie, and you can hear more about how your community can become involved in this program.
Thank you, Donna, and thank you, builders. What amazing stories and experiments, and it's awesome to see how you're actually connecting with your communities. We want to thank everyone else for joining our impact event today on Heartland Forward's Community Growth Program and Toolkit. I hope you have found these conversations useful. I know I certainly have. It's been great to hear about the work that so many folks, not just our builders, but our community leaders, are doing to what everyone is doing to inspire, fund, and grow experimentation and entrepreneurship across the Heartland. I'm so thankful to all our speakers for joining us today and sharing their perspectives with us. At Heartland Forward, we have been incredibly fortunate to work with our fantastic partners at Builders and Backers and Accenture in developing the program and toolkit. So I'd like to close out our time together today. We packed a lot in, but I'd like to close by sharing how you and your community can engage with the Community Growth Program and Toolkit as we move forward with its expansion. As we announced earlier, after our successful launches in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Oxford, Mississippi, we are thrilled to commit to funding and supporting 1,000 builders across the Heartland by 2023. So by bringing together the comprehensive curriculum of Builders and Backers with the expertise and agility of Accenture, the program and toolkit gives communities the ability to better solve challenges, support innovation and entrepreneurs, foster job creation, and champion inclusive growth. If you or your community are interested in being a part of our 2022 expansion, I'd encourage you to visit our Community Growth Program and Toolkit webpage at community.heartlandforward.org, where you can find more information and sign up to receive information on how to bring the Community Growth Program Toolkit to your community. Again, the webpage for more information and to get in touch with us is community.heartlandforward.org. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We look forward to being in touch. We look forward to experimenting with you and growing our communities and developing more builders and backers and engaging the Heartland in the future. Thank you. Have a great day.